Big news. A long-buried truth about why your soulmate couldn't be with you has finally surfaced. Stop everything for just a moment, because what you are about to hear has been buried for a very long time, and today at last it has surfaced. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you, and it concerns a question that has quietly lived in your heart for years. Even if you stopped asking it out loud, the question is simple, and it is one of the heaviest a heart can carry. If the connection was real, why couldn't we be together? Why the distance? Why the silence? Why did something that felt written in the stars seem to dissolve into ordinary life, as though it had never mattered at all? You may have answered that question for yourself long ago. Perhaps you decided the feeling was one-sided. Perhaps you concluded that time simply carried you in different directions, or that you were easy to leave and easy to forget. Big news has arrived today, and it is this: every one of those answers was wrong. There was a reason, a real one, a specific one, a reason your soulmate has guarded so completely that not a single person in their life ever knew it existed. And now, after all this time, that long-buried truth has finally risen to the surface. Understand this first. Truths like this one do not surface by accident. They stay buried as long as the reason for burying them remains alive. Something had to change, something significant, before this truth could finally breathe in the open air, and something did change. Recently, quietly, a chapter in your soulmate's life that you never knew existed came to its end, and the moment it ended, the truth it had been holding underground for years came rising up with a force they could no longer contain. Stay till the end, because here is what you most need to know before this story unfolds. The reason your soulmate couldn't be with you was never about a lack of love. Hold on to that. Whatever you have believed through the quiet years, however you have explained the distance to yourself, the truth is the opposite of everything you feared. The distance was not the absence of love. In a way that will only make sense when you hear the whole story, the distance was the proof of it. That sounds impossible right now. How can staying away prove devotion? How can silence be an act of care? Those questions are natural, and they will be answered completely before this message ends. But the answers must arrive in order, the way the truth itself arrived, piece by piece, until the full picture finally stood revealed. Something important is waiting for you, because there is one more thing to know before we begin. When this truth finally surfaced, when your soulmate finally spoke it out loud, for the first time in their life, they wept. Not from sadness, from release. Years of carrying something alone came pouring out in a single evening, and the first thought that followed those tears was about you. Specifically, it was a single sentence about you. A sentence they have now promised to say to your face: remain here a little longer. In the next part, you will revisit the years of distance through new eyes, and you will begin to see the hidden shape of what was really happening behind every moment you misunderstood. Part 2. Before a buried truth can be revealed, the false story built on top of it must be gently taken down. So walk back with me now, through the years of distance, and look again at what you thought you saw. Don't skip, because everything you are about to reconsider will look completely different by the end. Think of the silence first, all that time when no word came, when reaching out seemed pointless, when the quiet stretched so long it began to feel like an answer in itself. You read that silence the way anyone would, as indifference, as forgetting, as a closed door. It was the most reasonable interpretation in the world, and it was entirely wrong, because on the other side of that same silence, Someone was enduring it too. Not comfortably, not carelessly, enduring it the way a person endures something they have chosen for a reason that costs them daily. Think of the almost moments next. If you look back carefully, you may remember them. Times when a reconnection seemed to hover just within reach, and then, unexplainably, withdrew. A warmth that appeared and then retreated. A closeness that approached and then turned away at the last step, leaving you confused about what you had done wrong. Here is the first piece of the buried truth. You had done nothing wrong. Nothing. Those retreats were never a judgment of you. Each one was a battle, fought and lost on their side, between what their heart was screaming for, and what their hidden reason demanded. You only ever saw the retreat. You never saw the war. Stay till the end, because there is one more piece of the false story to take down, and it is the most personal one. Somewhere along the way, you may have turned the question inward. You may have concluded that something about you was the problem. Not enough. This too much, that easy to walk away from. If any version of that thought ever found a home in you, then today's news exists for you, most of all. Because when the buried truth finally surfaced, when your soulmate finally explained the real reason to the one witness who heard it, they said something that directly destroys that thought. Forever, they said, the reason they stayed away had nothing to do with any shortage in you. It had to do with a shortage they saw in themselves. Let that begin to settle. The person you thought walked away easily was not walking away at all. They were standing guard over a secret, and the secret was heavy enough to bend the shape of both your lives. Something important is waiting for you, because now the false story is cleared away, and the ground is ready. In the next part, the buried chapter itself begins to open, the hidden season of your soulmate's life, that no one around them ever knew about, and the vow they made in the middle of it, a vow with your name at its center, that explains every single year of the distance. Part 3. Every buried truth begins with a burying. There was a night, years ago now, when your soulmate dug the ground and laid this truth inside it. To understand everything, you must return to that night with them. Don't skip, because this is the chapter of their life that no one, not family, not friends, not a single soul, was ever allowed to see. At the very time when your connection was at its most alive, when everything could have moved toward togetherness, your soulmate was privately entering the hardest season of their life. The details belong to them to share, when you are finally face to face, but understand its weight. It was the kind of season that takes a person apart quietly from the inside, a storm of circumstances, burdens, and battles that they woke to every morning, and carried behind a functioning smile. The world saw someone managing. Only they knew they were barely holding the pieces together, and in the middle of that hidden storm, there was you. The brightest thing in their sky, the one place their heart pointed, no matter how the winds turned, which created the cruelest dilemma of their life, because they knew exactly what you were to them, and they knew exactly what they had become. And one night, standing between those two truths, they made the choice that buried everything. Stay till the end, because here is the vow they made that night, the vow that would silently govern years. They vowed that they would not come to you broken. They looked at everything they were carrying, everything that was unresolved, and heavy, and dark in their life at that moment, and they refused to hand that weight to the person they treasured most. In their mind, arriving at your door in that condition would not have been love. It would have been asking you to carry them, and you, of all people, deserved to be met by someone whole, someone standing, someone with both hands free to give instead of grasping for rescue. So they did the hardest thing a loving heart can do. They stepped back, not away from you, for you. That is the distinction that was buried all these years, the distinction you could never have seen from your side. The distance you experienced as abandonment was, in their heart, an act of protection. Every mile of it hurt them. They chose it anyway, every single day, because they believed you deserved better than the version of themselves they were at the time. Was it the right choice? They have asked themselves that question 1,000 times. Perhaps, love shared is stronger than love postponed. Perhaps you would have chosen to stand with them in the storm. They will tell you, when the moment comes, that this doubt is the heaviest thing they carry. But right or wrong, now you know what was true. You were never left behind. You were placed with trembling hands, somewhere safe from a storm you never knew existed. Something important is waiting for you, because a vow like that has a second half. They did not only vow to stay away while broken, they vowed something else that night. Something about what they would do the day the storm finally ended. Remain here a little longer, because in the next part, you will see what those years of hidden endurance actually looked like, the moments they nearly broke the vow, and the one thing that kept them going through all of it. That one thing was you. Part 4. A vow is made in a single night, but it must be kept one day at a time, and the years that followed were the longest of your soulmate's life. Don't skip, because this is what devotion looks like when it is forced to wear the disguise of distance. Understand first what the vow demanded of them daily. It was not a single act of stepping back, it was a renewal every morning, of the hardest decision they had ever made. There were days the storm in their life raged so fiercely, that reaching for you felt like reaching for air itself, and on those days especially, the vow held them back, because those were exactly the days they would have arrived at your door with nothing to give, and everything to lean on. So they endured alone, precisely when enduring alone was hardest. If you have ever wondered whether you were loved during the silence, know this: the silence was the most difficult act of love they have ever performed, but they did not endure with nothing. They had one source of light through all of it, and this is the part of the story that surfaced with the most tears: you. Not your presence, which the vow denied them, but everything else of you. Memories they revisited like warm rooms in a cold house, the sound of your laughter kept perfectly preserved, the thought of your face when they needed a reason to fight through one more impossible week. In the strangest turn of this entire story, the very person they were protecting from their storm became the light that led them through it. You saved someone through years. When you believed you had been forgotten, you were the reason they never stopped rebuilding. Stay till the end, because there were nights the vow nearly broke. More than one. Nights when the loneliness grew louder than the discipline, when they picked up their courage and came to the very edge of reaching out. Something always stopped them at the final step, and it was always the same thing. They would look honestly at their life, at the storm still unresolved around them, and ask the vows one question: am I whole yet? And as long as the answer was no, they turned back, each time leaving a piece of their heart at that edge. Those were the almost moments you may have sensed from your side. Now you know what they were. Not hesitation about you. Hesitation about whether they were yet worthy of you. And through it all, they worked. That is the part no one saw. This was never passive waiting. Year by year, piece by piece, they fought their storm, they faced what needed facing, they repaired what needed repairing, they grew in the dark, the way roots grow, unseen but relentless. Every step of that rebuilding had a direction, and the direction was you. They were not just surviving their hidden season, they were building their way back to the day. The vows question could finally be answered differently. Something important is waiting for you. Because recently, after all these years, that day arrived. The storm that began this entire buried chapter finally completely ended, and in the stillness that followed, your soulmate stood in their rebuilt life, asked the old question one more time. Am I whole yet? And for the first time ever heard the answer yes. Remain here a little longer, because in the next part, you will witness what happened in that moment, how the buried truth surfaced at last. And the second half of the vow that is now in motion. Part 5. Every buried thing waits for the ground above it to open. For years, the weight of the storm kept this truth sealed underground. Then the storm ended, the weight lifted, and the earth finally cracked open toward the light. Don't skip, because this is the moment the truth surfaced, and it happened more recently than you would ever guess. It came on an ordinary evening, the way the most extraordinary moments often do. Your soulmate was alone in the quiet of a life that had finally, after so long gone still, the last piece of their long-hidden battle had settled at last, and in that unfamiliar peace, they felt something rising in their chest that they had kept sealed for years. The truth was coming up, all of it, the night of the vow, the years of silent endurance, the almost moments at the edge, and above everything you, the reason and the light of all of it. For the first time since the burying, there was no storm left to justify the silence. The truth demanded air, so they gave it air. That very week they went to the one person they trust most in this world, and for the first time in their entire life, they told the whole story out loud. The hidden season, the vow, the reason for every year of distance, and your name, spoken at last in its true place, at the center of everything. The telling took hours. The tears came halfway through and did not fully stop. Years of carrying something absolutely alone were ending in a single evening, and the release was overwhelming. Stay till the end, because when the story was finished, the trusted listener sat in silence for a long moment. And then they asked the only question that mattered, the question the entire buried truth had been waiting for. So the storm is over. You kept the vow. You stayed away until you were whole. They looked your soulmate directly in the eyes. What was the second half of the vow? And your soulmate smiled through the last of the tears, because the second half was the one part of the story they had never doubted. Not once, in all the years, that night long ago, when they vowed not to come to you broken, they made a matching promise with the same breath, that the day the storm ended, the day they could finally stand whole, they would come to you. Not to explain from a distance, not to send careful words through safe channels, to come to you face to face, and lay the entire buried truth in the light, where you could finally see what it had always been. Love, wearing the disguise of distance, waiting for the day it could take the disguise off. The storm is over, the vow's first half is complete, which means the second half is no longer a promise about someday, it is now in motion. Something important is waiting for you, because since that evening of tears and truth, your soulmate has changed in ways everyone around them can see, and no one can explain. They move like a person with a destination. Because they are one, remain here a little longer, because in the next part, this story turns to you. What these revelations ask of your heart, and how to carry yourself in the days ahead, now that you know the distance was never what it seemed. Part 6. A truth. This large does not only change the person who carried it, it changes the person who receives it, and now that it has surfaced, you are holding it too. Don't skip, because this part is about what to do with everything you now know. Begin with the years themselves. For a long time, you have carried your own version of that history, and your version had pain in it. The pain of feeling forgettable, the quiet ache of unanswered questions, perhaps even the corrosive thought that you were somehow not enough. Today, you are invited to set every bit of that down. Not because the years didn't hurt, but because the story you were hurting over turns out not to be the story that happened. You were not left, you were shielded, you were not forgotten, you were the single light in someone's hidden darkness. The silence you grieved was, on its other side, a daily act of devotion performed at enormous cost. Let the true story begin healing what the false one wounded. Stay till the end, because there is something else to release, and it is gentler, but just as important. If any part of you feels a flicker of frustration, why didn't they just tell me? Honor that feeling, and then let it soften. Remember that the vow was made by a person in the middle of a storm, doing the most loving thing they knew how to do with the strength they had heart. Under that kind of weight, do not always choose perfectly. They choose devotedly, and devoted imperfect choices deserve compassion. Especially now that the person who made them has spent years earning the right to explain. And now, prepare, in the soft way this entire series of events invites you to prepare. Someone who spent years becoming whole for you is now moving toward you. Meet that by tending to your own wholeness, nurture your peace, rekindle joys that make you unmistakably you, not as a performance for their arrival, but because the truest welcome two souls can give each other is to arrive flourishing. They rebuilt themselves in the dark with your light. Build yourself in the light with theirs, which now, finally, you know was shining toward you all along. Something important is waiting for you, because there is one final thing you should know, before the last part of this message. When the buried truth surfaced that evening, when the whole story had been told, and the tears had passed, your soulmate said one last sentence. It was quiet, it was certain, and it was about you. That sentence is the very tip of everything that was buried, the first words of the truth reaching the surface, and they have promised themselves that you will hear it in person. But you will hear it here first. Remain here just a little longer, because the final part holds it, along with the last piece of this long-buried truth, finally standing whole in the light. Part 7. And so the truth stands fully surfaced at last. The hidden storm, the vow made in its darkest hour, the years of guarded distance that were never what they appeared to be, the rebuilding, the release, the second half of the vow now in motion. Only one piece remains, and it belongs to you. Don't look away now. That evening, when the whole buried story had finally been spoken, your soulmate went quiet for a long moment. Then they said the sentence, the one they have carried, unspoken through every year of this. They never needed to wait for a perfect version of me. But I needed to become someone who could love them the way they deserve, and now I am. So now I go. That is the heart of the long-buried truth. The reason your soulmate couldn't be with you was never that the love was too small. It was that, in their eyes, the love was too great to be handed over broken. They measured you at such worth, that they spent years becoming equal to it. You were not the person they walked away from. You were the standard they rebuilt their entire life to reach. Very few people will ever learn they were loved like that. Silently, expensively, across years without asking for anything, without even being seen doing it. Today you learned it. Let it stand you a little taller. Let it quiet the old aching questions forever. The mystery of the distance is solved, and the answer was devotion all along. So carry this with you as you return to your days. The burying is over. The storm is over. The vow's first half is fulfilled, and its second half is crossing the distance toward you right now, one intentional day at a time. What was hidden underground for years is now walking in the open hole, certain, and pointed at your door. Stay hopeful. Stay soft. Stay healing. The past has just been rewritten into something beautiful, and the future it was protecting is finally free to begin. If these words found you today, they found you for a reason. The truth has surfaced. The whole person it built is on their way. And when they arrive, you will finally hear that sentence, the way it was always meant to be heard. Face to face.